Don't send it. Yeah, I was over here.
Over there.
Yeah, tell me that. I'm like, well, apparently your offer or your listing is very popular with this. So
Hopping in here, that's goodness. I know. It's pretty funny.
So really what happened is and you assume that they would sign it, right? Not telling you. But there's nothing in anywhere that says they have to. Right? So that's a problem. But that, I probably shouldn't have said that in front of this group. Because I really don't want to talking about it. But that's really where
This is Life of an Escrow?
Yes.
So you're also going to be live on Facebook.
Oh.
That's all he agreed to. He didn't agree, or she didn't agree to, to hold anything because rules of law says that someone has to. I can share.
She has my
But yeah, it's one of those dual-edged swords, right? Yeah.
That's okay.
Oh.
I don't know. I'm like, you can tell me the truth. She won't. She won't tell me.
Life on Facebook?
Yeah. Get your signature ready.
And there's people in there, so I mean it's the right link.
Awesome. Yay.
Second time's a charm.
Yes, it's all her notes combined. And so they, she'll go over. Oh, yeah. And I'll get you all the stuff. No, I don't think so. Thanks for you. Okay. No, I think you're good. Here, I'll pass this over.
All right, everybody, we're getting them all in here,
We're
ladies.
getting them all squeezed
So
in. We just need
that's your
Leslie.
seat, wherever you want to sit.
Okay. Well, I'll put Leslie there in the hot seat.
All right, you're in Zoom.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, I see
And
that.
these are
Yes,
all the people that are logging in.
Leslie's in the elevator, I believe. She'll be getting on shortly. Oh, I want to make sure.
Oh, thank you.
I'm gonna put your purses down here because we're probably gonna need that seat.
Yeah.
How you doing there, kiddo? Good, Kelsey.
No, it wasn't today. It wasn't yesterday. It's today. I know when I came in, I like. Yeah.
I didn't see So when I'm like back in the yeah, no, when I'm back here, yeah, too, yeah. What? So I was like, I'm gonna make sure I get in here.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Are you staying? Such a pretty bird. Yeah, hold on, let me get you stuff.
Yeah, I like that. All right, guys, Leslie will be back in a minute. Hey, everybody online, nice to have you guys here. Can everybody hear us? All right, that's good. 4 minutes.
Yes, I can hear
Hey,
you.
how you doing, Lori? I can see you.
Great.
Yeah.
I was halfway there and had to turn around.
What's that?
I was halfway there and had to turn around. There's so many accidents and lights out. It was
Yeah,
horrible.
people don't know how to drive when it's wet. Have to send them all to Washington State for a while. Yeah. Pull up a seat. Don't be shy. This is a group that you cannot be shy. It's like a large family. If you're shy, you don't know.
Good morning, everyone. So we're just gonna put stuff over here real quick.
She will. Okay. Yeah, I kind of put it over there because I was like trying to keep it.
There's stuff there. If you love it, when you want to look on right now. Yeah, that's gonna be fun. Oh, okay. Are you coming?
I feel like more than how much it
Absolutely. Those houses are like $60,000.
I know.
The whole reason as to why people want them. But then they're in like a space for yeah, $100 a month. Right. And what's worse is that the leases all the same used to be way crazier. Like the leases used to be like 900 years, 2,000 years. There's one currently on Zillow that's up in Auburn, and I've talked to the property manager. And it's like, let's just look at the leases like.
It does.
Yeah. And so she was like, yeah, Zillow call. And I talked to the property manager, and he was like, we used to have a 2,000 yeah. And COVID forced us to only do a 30. And at that particular property, they have PG&E out right now to relay the lines. part of the funding is like if you're waiting, like they'll deactivate like the parks, the buildings, to collect rent. And then if you're not keeping up with your husband or something else, I will come in and handle business for you. And the youth park is still available to even collect rent. And then they sometimes,
I know, I'm like, here she is.
Okay, so you get the hard seat.
Okay.
Okay.
They have 30, 60, 90 days.
Where's my purse? I'm gonna get my glasses.
Okey-dokey.
Okay,
All right, let me do a little introduction here.
please, thank you.
Okay. Hey, everybody. God, we got a lot of people online, which is great. Kobe, I don't know if Kobe must be watching from the plane or something. So Vince, good you're here. Regina, awesome. Let's see, I can't see. Susan, how you doing? Lisa, hey, everybody. And we got a bunch more people. So anyway, all right, guys, let's get down to brass tacks here. So one of the things that happens, you heard the people talk this morning, being confident and being consistent, and confidence comes from product knowledge. One of the things that'll happen, and where's Dylan? Dylan's here somewhere. It happens all the time. or Christian, who's not here, he called me yesterday on an easement on a property that he sold in the Grass Valley area. And Dylan called me up on something on the preliminary title report, which I don't know if we're gonna be able to get removed, right? Because things come up, and you guys have heard me tell the story. I sold a property years ago. Everything was great. Didn't read the prelim like I should have, and found out that there was a lien by the county of Santa Clara. It was for back child pay support. The husband forgot to tell his new wife, and it didn't turn out really well. And besides that, they couldn't sell the house because they didn't have enough money to go to the next house. So reading a prelim matters. A lot of people get the prelim, and in the old days, we used to just put it in the folder. You have to look at the prelim, right? You need to understand what's going on there. Leslie has been in the business about as long as I have combined, just if you guys are trying to do math, close to 100 years, yeah. And so she's a very knowledgeable escrow officer. And as we talk about in our class every Wednesday, Erin, you have 2 business partners in every transaction, at least 2, right? You have your escrow officer and you have your lender, right? So you have to rely on your business partners, because there's no way you can do high volume or do multiple transactions if you're trying to do everything yourself. Okay, so for everybody online, thank you, Jan, for putting this together. Leslie Mitchell, a lot of us have used Leslie for years. She does my escrows. She does a lot of people's escrows. With that said, I'll just let Leslie take over. And thank you, by the way.
Oh, you're welcome.
So it's all yours.
All righty, awesome. Hi, everybody. All righty, so like Jeff said, yes, we've been doing this for a very, very long time. And the handout that Jan's passed around is this one. It's the flow of an escrow. And the first thing because a lot of people, that you want to be an escrow, but what is escrow? Once you're there, what do? I mean, I get this all the time. What's expected of me as the agent? Well, lucky for you, not a whole lot. Your number one objective when we go into escrow is that you keep your escrow officer informed. Anything that happens, any negotiations that go on, the first person you're going to pick up the phone, even if you don't have the addendum signed yet, call your escrow officer and go, we just negotiated, the seller's going to give a cash back, to the buyer for X amount. So the one thing that communicate. Even if you don't think it's appropriate, even if you don't think it's that important, let your escrow officer decide what the importance of it. So like I said, we're gonna start. One of the trendy things that's coming up right now, and I kind of want to put a kibosh on this, is that people don't understand the importance of marital status. California is a community property state. So no matter what, if somebody is married, whether or not they're going to be a borrower or not, their interest has got to be decided. So what's happening, I'm seeing now, is that we're getting all the way to loan docs. All of a sudden, I'm getting loan docs, and it's Joe Smith, a married man.
what? Joe's married? Nobody told me that he had a wife. So now we're at loan docs. The wife has got to do something. She's either going to deed off the property and completely divest herself of any interest, or she's going to join Joe, say that 3 times fast, in the contract. So that means wife has got to go back and sign everything. So this has come up more than 2 or 3 times in the last couple of weeks that we're down to the line. All of a sudden I'm getting marital status and somebody is married, and it's mostly on the buying side. On the selling side, we're going to know on our prelim, or if they've remarried since, let's say Joe was a single man, but now he's married. So what do we do now? Well, wife has got to do something with her interest on that property. Even though he was a single man, he's now married, community property interest. So always keep in mind, find out. I mean, a lot of times I know agents go, I didn't know he was married either. Really? You're in the car, you've been dealing with this guy at least for 30 days. He hasn't brought up the wife. So anyways, that's one thing that I'm seeing that's coming up. The other issue that you want to.
Just so you guys know, she's like me. There are no dumb questions.
Oh,
So
right.
she's using the word prelim.
Anytime.
If you don't know what prelims because you're brand new, ask what's a prelim. Okay?
Yeah, because I'll slip into the verbiage, so if I'm doing, just go, hey, slow down. The other thing that you guys want to know right up front, and this will also come out on your prelim. I cannot stress strongly enough that you guys need to do upfront prelims. What that means, you get a listing, call us. Let's get that prelim started. This will save you so many headaches. If you know what you're dealing with up front, and it's not that your sellers are lying to you, they don't know a lot of stuff. They're not aware. So there could be a lien against the property they have no knowledge of. This happens a lot with people that have declared bankruptcy because they're no longer paying this equity line. Doesn't mean that that equity line's gone away. We still have to deal with it because even though somebody's declared bankruptcy, the lender still has a lien on the property. That person individually is not liable, but the property is still held as security. So we still have to deal with it. So again, find out, get that prelim ordered. Let's take a look at it. Let's make sure that, if there's any red flags that we get it taken care of. The other thing is find out what kind of seller you have. Is this an investment property for them? If it's their personal residence or an investment property, big difference. If it's investment property, they're going to be probably subject to some real estate withholding. That's 3 1/3% of the sales price. So if you want to sit down and start talking numbers with somebody that's selling an investment property, keep in mind 3 1/3% will go to the franchise tax board of the sales price, not what they net, sales price. That comes to a shock to a lot of sellers. So, and again, that's going to show up on the prelim as to how they're holding title. Now, if they're holding Joe Smith and it's still just a second home or investment property, that may not show on the pre. It'll just show Joe Smith, a married man, or Joe Smith, a single man. But so you have to ask the questions. If you know for a fact that they're not living there, is this investment property? The prelim will show if there's other vestings such as an LLC or something like that. We'll know that. I'm not even going to blow your minds on what happens when those things come up. You'll deal with that as it comes up. So the other thing that I want to make sure, in part of your job as being in escrow, make sure all addendums, any counters, I said, pick up the phone, even if you guys are just talking about it. You can call me and go, Leslie, I'm anticipating that we're going to give $5,000 to the buyer for closing cost credit. I'm going to note the file because then I'm going to come back around and say, hey, did this ever come through? If I don't see an addendum, I've got to note my file that I'm still going to ask you about it because maybe you forgot. You got it signed and you forgot to give it to me. I've got a note in the file saying, let's ask the agent whether or not that ever came about. So again, one of the items is that you're going to receive a preliminary title report when you're in escrow, but you guys are super smart you're going to get the prelim when you take the listing, right? Everybody's going to go ahead and order that prelim so you can get it going. Otherwise, you are going to have a delay as we deal with things. I know when you're a buyer agent that you don't have a choice. You'll get the prelim whenever the listing agent has decided to do it. But if you're the listing agent, again, pre-open those orders. Otherwise, if there's things that pop up on the prelim, this is what can cause delays. And some of the delays, like Jeff was talking, old liens that were not cleared. You know, his was child support. We see that a lot. Child support, IRS. Oh my gosh, if your seller has an IRS lien, now with COVID, you're talking 6 weeks to get that resolved. I mean, at least, because everybody's working remotely. So if you got an all cash buyer, you can close in 10 days, you ain't closing in 10 days because that's got to get cleared. And also the thing, solar is a big one. So the sooner you can get started on solar, we contact the solar companies when you pre-open and say, we're anticipating a contract soon. What's your procedure? What's your protocol? What do we need to do? We want to get that started because solar is really, really popular. So they're really, really lagging behind in some of their response times. So the sooner we can raise our hand and go, hello, we're going to do a solar transfer, you know, and so that's always best to get that started.
Leslie, does it matter if it's owned or leased? You have to get that information.
Very rarely is it owned. Most of what we're seeing with solar are PPAs, the purchase power agreements, which is sort of a lease. They might own the solar, but they're selling the power back to the agency. So those kind of agreements still have to be transferred. So they can own the solar equipment, but if they're in a PPA, which thankfully now we're seeing more and more and less of the Empower Y Green, roll it to your property tax thing. That's a whole other class, you guys, but I just want you to write down Empower and Y Green. Those guys have to be paid off. There is no transfer of solar.
There's pens and pads too, you guys, if you need them.
And that can really make a difference. Again, you're a listing agent, you see solar up on the roof, ask questions. Do you own it? Do you have a purchase power agreement? And a lot of times sellers, here's where I'm saying that sellers don't always know. They feel they own it and it's a Y Green or Empower. And what it is that it's rolled over to their property taxes. When solar was first introduced into our area, these companies came out and sold the solar to sellers this way. You're only paying for the solar as long as you own the property. Because what it does, it rolls over to the property taxes. And so then you're paying an additional tax fee when you pay your property taxes. But what lenders, okay, now you're selling the house, the lenders look at that as a lien superior to their new deed of trust, and it has to be paid off. And I can think of one off the top of my head. It was $36,000 that the seller had to pay off in order to complete the transaction. So depending on when they got the solar, yeah, that can be pretty pricey. And again, these are things that you can find out when you pre-open. This is gonna be my big buzzword for today is pre-open your prelims, get those open. The other thing that we're gonna be doing throughout the course of the escrow is getting the HOA docs. I know your sellers are gonna moan because they're expensive, they're pricey. Most of them just to get the docs are around $500. And I love the agents that talk their sellers into doing that even before a buyer comes, because you're done. You can, as soon as that buyer comes on board, here's the HOA docs, all of your disclosure times, you're ready to roll. And it's really hard for sellers to have to come up with that money, you know, and they're going, but I don't even have a buyer yet. Well, you will. I mean, you are going to sell the property and you are going to need these documents. And most of the HOA docs are done online. So we do everything short of inputting the credit card. As soon as we can get all the way up to, we can send a link to the seller, seller goes online, orders them, and it's at least 10 days before you're gonna get them. So keep that in mind when you're looking at all your timelines, you know, for disclosures and everything, because the buyer can still back out until they get a copy of those HOA docs. Any other reports that need to be ordered? Most of the time, I think it's pretty standard. Most escrow companies will order your NHD and your home warranties and things like that. A few TCs still do it, but don't feel bad if you need the NHD. I mean, when you open the order, you just need to be real honest with your escrow officer and go, I need you to start. I mean, you can do it with your pre-opens. You can sit there and go, can you order the NHD, get the HOA docs rolling, contact my seller for their payoff information. And then you're all done. You're dialed. All you're doing is waiting for our contract to come in. And that's where a lot of the time in the front of an escrow is waiting to get that information from the seller. So if you have a really short escrow, get all the information you can up front. The next other item that we're going to be working with is the lender. And the lenders now, I mean, I think all of us have gotten down to such a short, back in the day, a 45-day escrow was pretty common. Now it's 30 days. 30 days is usually, and now I've seen 21 and 10, and it's like, whoa, you guys are blowing my mind. But, and when I see the 10 days, it's like, holy, okay, all hands on deck, we're doing this. But yeah, so we also have to work with the lenders, with what the lenders are going to do. And now you guys are the buyer's agent. The lenders are going to contact us and ask us for our fees. And then escrow and the lender will work together in what we call balancing. And it means that the lender's going to have their sets of fees. We have our sets of fees. We want to merge them together and make sure everybody agrees as to what is going to be the buyer's liability in this. And we want to get that balance, because when it comes to funding, we don't want any hiccups. We want to make sure the lender agrees what the buyer needs to bring in, escrow agrees what the buyer needs to bring in, and everybody is on the same page. Towards the end of the escrow, we're going to start auditing the file. This is where you might get an email from your escrow officer. Hey, I just noticed I'm missing a signature on this addendum, or this initial here, or whatever. So that's when we start auditing and bringing things in. And again, luckily for you guys, your whole job in all of this is just to keep your escrow officer informed of what's going on. I mean, you've done all the hard work. You've got buyer and seller to agree to everything. You've got the contract signed. We take that contract. That's our Bible. Basically, those are our instructions as to how we're going to complete your escrow. And we go through that and we make sure that all the terms that both buyer and seller have agreed to are being met. And that's what our whole goal is in running through this whole flow chart, is to make sure at the end that all the terms have been met. Everybody agrees that escrow can close and that there's nothing hanging out there. We also have to prepare everything for recording. And this is a lot of stuff that happens that you guys aren't even aware of. But every county's recorder's office has different requirements. So your recording package might be submitted a couple of times, because it might get kicked back. That this weird county wants this on their cover page. So we're dealing with, and believe this is under the gun. I mean, lenders funded, you guys are waiting. I mean, moving van is in the driveway, and the recorder's office just called us and said our package was rejected. Can you imagine? I mean, holy cow. I mean, I never had gray hair. No, I'm kidding. But, so we're scrambling, and the one nice thing that COVID did is introduce a lot more freedom for e-recording. That was started before COVID, but what most of the recorder's office was doing this because they just didn't want to get involved in e-recording. But most of the counties now, there's some obscure ones that don't do e-recording. So the fixes we can do. The fixes we can take care of and get it resubmitted. But like I said, a lot of this stuff is going on. You guys aren't even aware of it. You're thinking it's sunshine and rainbows and puppy dogs. And we're back there going, the alarms are sounding. So then we get everything down to the recorder's office. Now we're waiting for the lender's money to come in. Buyer, we've already told them what they need to bring in. One thing I want to make sure everybody's aware of, especially with fast closes, no personal checks. It's 10 business days for that to become good funds. If they want to bring in a personal check and it's their earnest money deposit and you guys have a 30-day escrow, no worries. We got it. You got a 10-day escrow? Nope. Because that check will not be good until that 10th business day. So most of the time, buyers' remaining funds, their down payment is going to be in the form of a wire. Cashier's check is good the next day. But I can't tell you how many times we've had buyers wander in the office with their checkbook. Hey, so I'm going to write you a check for $50,000. No, you're not. You're going to go, here's your wire instructions again. Now you need to go to the bank and get that $50,000 wired to us. Then after everything is done, this is when you guys get the glorious broker's package that shows that, oh, this was a breeze, everything was done, you got your buyers closing, escrow went smooth, and we're back drinking. No, I'm kidding. But basically, that's the life of an escrow. So again, the most important thing for the agent side to do is just stay in touch with your escrow officer, let them know what's going on with your buyer or your seller. Most of the time, if we need something from you, we know where to find you. We're going to hound you because of all of these other time sensitive things that are backing up behind us, that we need this. And most importantly is getting the information from your sellers. That is the most important. You guys have questions, comments? Did I totally confuse you? I hope so, because then you'll have to call me.
Oh, is there anyone online that has a question?
Oh, I'm not used to this.
Okay, let's see. Can everybody get online?
I have a question, and you may have covered it. I'm sorry to step out and take a call, but so if I have a listing, is it beneficial to have the prelim pulled prior to going into escrow?
Absolutely. Yep. That's the big take home that I want everybody to take away from this. Once you have a listing, get that prelim ordered. It's going to save you so many nightmares. I mean, 9 out of 10 times it's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong on the property, but it's that 10th one that you're going, oh Lord. And like I said, sellers don't always know. They're not aware that there is a child support lien. Maybe it was 10 years ago. It's just never been resolved. They haven't sold the property, so they haven't had a prelim. It's not like they're trying to be deceptive. They just honestly don't know. And I find that true with solar a lot of the times. They don't know what they agreed to. It was just some salesman walked in and it sounded like a great idea. So yeah, I had signed up. I don't know. Once a year we rectify and I pay them, but they have no idea how they got solar on their property. So yeah, always, if you guys take away nothing else, pre-open your orders. And let's take a look at what's going on with the property prior to you getting a buyer. The other thing is that with the buyer, you want to be able to have a clean property to present to the buyer. There's nothing worse than calling the buyer's agent and going, hey, the prelim's in and there's a couple of liens against my seller that we're going to have to clear up. They're going to get, what else haven't you told us? And they may be nothing, but you're also planting that little doubt that maybe there was something else that the seller wasn't being level about. And it has nothing to do with being deceptive. It's just that perception. So if you have all of those items taken care of and there's no issue, I mean, you're going to not have to make that ugly phone call to the buyer and say, yeah, we need, 14 days or we need, 6 weeks for an IRS lien. You don't want to have that conversation.
I got a question for you.
Okay.
So I live in North Auburn, and we had a guy come to our house for an energy inspection, I guess, because we were interested in solar. And he talked us into not only getting solar, but we got a new pool pump, we got insulation in our attic, and we got new windows. That was all through Empower, and it ended up being $70,000. And we refinanced this early this year, and we had to pay that off, and it sucked. And I just wanted to share that because I'm wondering, would that Empower loan, obviously it's not going to share all those details, but would that be in the preliminary report? So the selling agent would know that in case, let's say it had been years and the seller forgot?
More than likely, no. But what would be the first clue is that you would have a super high tax bill. And especially a loan that size, because Empower is one of those that rolls to your property taxes. And if
Right.
you're looking at a home where people have been in it for, let's say, 10 years, and they have a $4,000 each installment tax bill, and it's a mid-sized home, you're going to go, what? And you're going to look at the tax bill, because that's where it will show. And it does show on a tax bill. So, and you can pull the tax bill off the prelim. And that would also show where it's at. But sometimes it shows up on prelims, but in the beginning, nobody knew what these guys were doing. And even as an escrow officer, back when White Green and Empower first came in, I wasn't aware that they were having to be paid off. I had no clue, because they sold us the same bill of goods that this had, it's just going to transfer to the new buyer, and they're going to pay it on their tax bill. Well, until you have a lender sit there and go, we're not loaning on that. We're not going to be behind this Empower lien. No, we need to be in a first lien position. That's when all this came out, is that we had lenders left and right that going, no. And at first, lenders were loaning on these properties until they realized that the Empower and White Green lien was superior to theirs. So there was probably a period of 2 years that it was no harm, no foul. And then the lenders wised up and started pulling their loan packages and said, no, we're not, this has got to get paid off. We're not going to be behind this Empower White Green. I'm so sorry. Yeah. Sounded like a good idea, right?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely got snowed by that, but luckily we were able to pull it off.
Right. Well, and
we-
the nice thing is that I have heard that they were under a lot of scrutiny for all of this, and that now they have a rescission period, and I can't remember what it is. I want to say it's a 10-day rescission from the time you sign with them, that you have the right to change your mind. Before it didn't, they just bam, went for it. So I think now this is kind of the county's answer. And you're right, good thing to point out, White Green and Empower are not just solar. So if your seller says that they have a new HVAC or they have new windows, how did you pay for that? Because Empower and White Green will do any of those energy saving. And I've even seen on TV where they're doing landscaping. They'll do drought tolerant landscaping. So any new improvements on a property, ask your seller, how was that paid for? How did you get that there? So, and again, if you get the prelim, take a look at what they're paying on taxes, because if it is Empower or White Green, you're going to see an unusually high tax. Franchise tax board. Right. You get an exemption. I don't know if you guys heard that, but she was asking about the 3 1/3 for the franchise tax board. If it's your personal residence, you have an exemption, so you're not going to have to pay. But if it's investment property, and they do have a form that's called a 593, I don't expect you to remember. There is a form that we can give to your investor and take to their accountant and see whether or not they can knock that down. But the standard rule of thumb is 3 1/3 of the sales price, not of their proceeds, of the sales price. That can usually make a difference to some people, whether or not they're going to sell that property or they're going to hang on to it. And what it is California Franchise Tax Board wants their money up front. instead of waiting for when they file taxes. A good way to explain this to the investors that you're going to get a voucher. When we close that file, we're going to send a voucher to the IRS and to the sellers showing that they've already paid $16,000 of taxes for that year. So they get credit for the taxes. It's just, it's not when they file the taxes. Greedy bunches of people, they want their money right now. And another thing to keep in mind too is let me know whether or not your buyer or seller is out of the area, out of state. That matters a lot in timing with closing, even out of the country. And yeah, we do have signings out of the country. And that was real interesting during COVID, trying to get somebody an appointment at the US Embassy that is not open. I had to do that in Italy and in China. So yeah, that was not, I mean, we got lucky and they got in, but so out of country, US Embassy, that means even Mexico or Canada, they have to go to the US Embassy to sign. But if it's out of state, again, e-docs are wonderful, but we still have to have the hard copy. We have to have those wet signatures on the recordable documents. So if you have a buyer that's in Washington State, we have to have that deed of trust back from them, the actual copy. I mean, a notary service with a FedEx label back, but we have to keep in mind we're losing a couple of days there for out of area signings. Anybody else? So what are you guys gonna do when you get a listing? Yay!
Get a pen.
That's right. And you're gonna pre-open with? Perfect.
Box of pens.
Anybody else questions? Did I totally confuse or anybody? All right, you're an easy crowd. Piece of
Thank
cake.
you for coming, you guys. Thank you.
I
And
hope
just
you
so you know, Jeff, I don't know if you guys heard me, but Jeff and Leslie actually created this beautiful flyer.
We did. Jeff and I go back a long time.
Yeah.
I'm telling you guys
This is
have
his little piece
an
of art.
awesome leader in Jeff.
Yeah,
He is amazing.
he is.
And I'm blessed that, you know, I'm his escrow officer. So we do a lot of business. So anyways, good luck. If you guys have questions, you know how to find me. I mean, and here's my feeling on this. Even if it's not my escrow, my door is open. If you guys have a question and you have somebody that may not be communicating with you, call me.
Yeah.
I mean, the advice
No
is
problem.
always free, right? So, and unfortunately, there are some bad escrow officers out there, not at Cornerstone, but there are, and you might have the unfortunate, you know, that you're representing the buyer, you get somebody, you go, call me and go, Leslie, does this sound right to you? And I can give you my advice. You know, it's always free and it's not a big deal. All right.
Okay.
Cool.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for joining online.
Thank you. I hope they didn't look up my nose the whole time.
Thank you for sharing your expertise.
I don't know if you stopped recording. Let's see.
I don't know. It
This is
says
mine.
end meeting for all.
Okay.